everyone, and welcome to my channel, Cooking for the Family. I'm Dyvonne, and today I'm going to share with y'all how to make steak pizzaiola. If you have never heard of steak pizzaiola or had it before, it is my pleasure to introduce it to you. I'm going to share with you how I love to make it. I have been making it for quite a while now, but it's been a few months since I made it for the family, so I decided to go ahead and make it tonight for dinner and share it with all of y'all. Now, steak pizzaiola, what we're going to be using is a yellow onion, and you want to use, if it's a large onion, half. If it's a small to a medium onion, you can use the whole onion. And you're going to need about a cup to maybe about a cup and a fourth of yellow chopped onion. We're also going to be using some garlic cloves, and we're going to be using 4 garlic cloves. Now, if your garlic cloves are on the small side, then you definitely probably want to use 5, but usually about 4 garlic cloves will do you. And I just go ahead and mince my garlic cloves just like I did there. And with your onion, you want to chop your onion. I chop my onion about the size of a dime, not too much bigger than that. For our steak pizzaiola, I'm going to be using some thin cut chuck steak. Now, with the steak pizzaiola, traditionally steak pizzaiola is considered a peasant dish, and the reason why it's considered a peasant dish is because you're using like a lesser cut of beef, and so you're going to make it nice and tender. And so to make it nice and tender, it's going to stew in this wonderful sauce that we are going to be making. And you see how I have my chuck steaks resting on a napkin. After I took them out of the package and I rinsed them off, I like to go ahead and take any of the excess moisture off of the steaks because we're going to be searing them. And to get a nice sear, you definitely want to just dry off any excess moisture. And we went on and we seasoned it up with some salt and some pepper. I used some kosher salt and some coarse black pepper. Then I go on and I cut my steaks into pieces. This is going to actually give me about 9 pieces of the steak. I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands up really quick, and then we're going to go on and start to put together our steak pizzaiola. And I'm also going to share with y'all how I heard about steak pizzaiola, how it came to be on my radar, and I started cooking it for the family. So first though, what we're going to do is in my big wide pot, and you can use either a skillet or a pot, so you just want something that has like nice surface area so that way you can sear up the steak, and eventually you do want to have all your steak together in the same pot or pan, kind of simmering away so it can become nice and tender. Now also in my pot I put a couple tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil as well. If you are new to my channel, welcome in, and if you're a returner, welcome back. And on my channel, I share with all of y'all what I love to cook and bake for my family in my kitchen. I have been married to my wonderful husband for over 28 years now. Actually, this July, it'll be 29 years that we are married. I have been a mom for over 20 years now, and so over those years, I have cooked and baked many different dishes. And I learned my way around the kitchen from being in the kitchen with my mom and her sisters and my granny and my dad. My dad was a really good cook as well, and he learned from his mom. And how steak pizzaiola came to be on my radar was that, do you remember the show Everybody Loves Raymond? I know you guys remember that show. It's probably been off for more than a decade now, but the show, they always talked about steak pizzaiola, and my husband and I used to watch it, and I'm like, steak pizzaiola. So I looked up the steak pizzaiola, what that recipe was all about, and so I went on and I tweaked it to our liking. I stayed with the traditional steak pizzaiola, and I just kind of tweaked it just a little bit, and this is the steak pizzaiola that I have been making for many years now. It comes out so good. And in the description box below, I will have a list of all the ingredients you need to make the steak pizzaiola. Now with the steak, as you were saying, I was searing off the steak, and we're just going to cook it until we seared it off, because our steak is going to finish cooking in our sauce that we're going to be making, and it's going to stew and get nice and tender. And I'm using the chuck steak, the thin cut chuck steak. Now if you have a thicker piece of steak that you're using, you want to then pound it. You want to go ahead and put it between some plastic wrap, Pound your steak until it's nice and thin, because this is a thin steak meal that you want to be doing. And so now our steak is nice and seared. I'm going to go ahead and take it out. You see we have those nice drippings that we have in our pan, and you want to leave those nice drippings because that is going to be the base to help to build up our sauce. So I have my onion that we had cut up earlier. We're going to go ahead and saute our onion until they start to become nice and soft, and they're also going to become a little bit translucent. Once we get to that point with our onion, and our onion's going to look brown, but you don't want to brown your onion or sear it. The onion has picked up the bits from our pan, and so that's why it's a little brown, but you're not trying to brown your onion in particular. Now we're going to add our mushroom, and I have 8 ounces of sliced white mushroom. And with my mushroom, I always like to rinse it off. Even though it comes sliced and it's already ready, I always like to just take it, rinse it off really good in cold water, let it drain before I add it to my pot. And so also when you add your mushroom to your pot, if it's looking a little bit like this, and if you need a little bit more olive oil, go ahead and add some more. I'm just going to add about 1.5 tablespoons more of olive oil, just to kind of help the mushroom start to get going a little bit. Now, if you don't like mushroom, you can definitely leave it out, or you can also put in less if you prefer. Something else is that at this point, if you wanted to add bell pepper, you can add a red bell pepper or either a yellow bell pepper, or either you can add them both. And you want to seed them, devein them, and slice them about 1/8 of an inch thick. Now to my mushroom and my onion, I added a little bit more kosher salt, and that was about 1/2 teaspoon of coarse kosher salt. So I go ahead and I make sure that everything is mixed together well. Once it's looking like this and your mushrooms start to get soft and your onion is nice and soft, then we're going to go ahead and add in our minced garlic that we had prepared earlier. And you want to saute your garlic for about 1 minute or 2, just until the garlic starts to give off that nice aroma. So that's just going to take maybe about 1 minute or 2, 3 minutes at the most. But be mindful, we're not trying to brown our garlic. We're just trying to just make it nice and soft, and just try to get it all mixed together with the other ingredients. Now, once our garlic is nice and soft and we've sauteed it for about a couple minutes, then we're going to add in some dry white wine. This is the one that I'm using, and you want to use one that's really not expensive. This one's like less than $10 a bottle, and so I'm using some chardonnay, and I put in 1 cup of the wine. Now with the wine, I just turn my fire back on. Anytime that I'm adding like wine or rum or anything to any of the recipes, I always turn the fire off first. Then I add the alcohol, then I turn my fire back on. Okay, so be mindful that you do want to turn off your fire before you add like wine or anything. That's how I like to do it. And if you don't want to use wine, you can substitute the wine. The wine's going to give it a really delicious flavor, but you can substitute the wine for either chicken broth or either chicken stock. Either one of those will also work well. And then when you're cooking, whether you're using the wine or you're using the chicken broth or chicken stock, you want to simmer it until it reduces down to about half. The liquid is going to reduce down to about half. And so you're just going to be left with the really nice rich flavor if you're using the wine. And you see when I move the ingredients around in the pan, how the sauce has thickened up a bit. That's what you want to look for when it's time for us to add our other ingredient. And now next what we're going to do is I'm going to add in some tomato sauce. And actually I'm adding in the crushed tomatoes. And so we're adding in a 29-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Once you add your can of crushed tomatoes, you want to be sure that you thoroughly combine the onion and your garlic, your mushroom, and your sauce in with the crushed tomatoes. Next, I'm going to add in some oregano, and I'm adding in some crushed oregano, and I'm using 3/4 of a teaspoon of crushed oregano. Oregano has a very robust flavor, so if you want to start off with just a 1/2 teaspoon and then just build from there. But what I do is I add in 3/4 of a teaspoon. Then I added in some crushed red pepper flakes, which are optional, but I just like that, just like tiny little bit of kick to it. It doesn't really make it spicy or hot, but it just gives like a nice flavor to the sauce. And that was just a pinch of crushed red pepper flakes, and that was optional. Once I blended the crushed red pepper flakes and my oregano into my sauce, then we're going to add in our steak. We're putting our steak back into our pot with our sauce. I have my flame right now on a nice medium, and what I like to do is, as I'm adding in the steak back in, you want to try to just nestle it right down into the sauce, and eventually we're just going to cover our sauce and our steak. Our steak is going to be covered with that nice sauce that we have made. And just go on and put your pieces of steak right back in, and they should all, fit as best as you can into your pot. Then once we have our steak in our pot, any of the juices and that was in the pan that we had our steak resting in, go on and add those juices, those drippings from your pan that the steak was sitting in. Go ahead and add those to the pot. Go ahead and finish nestling your steak down in there. Then once I've got the steak nestled into the sauce, I'm going to put the top on my pot, and we're going to let our steak simmer in our sauce for about 30 minutes, about 25 to 30 minutes, or until our steak becomes nice and tender. That should take about 30 minutes or so. So our steak has been simmering for a while. Let's check on it to see how it's doing. It is looking so good. It's smelling so good in the kitchen. I like to also check the bottom. And remember, when I was with the sauce, I turned my pot down to a low. Once I put the top on to let it simmer, I turned it down to a low. And now we're going to taste our sauce to see how it's doing. I don't add any additional seasoning to my sauce until the steak is kind of simmered in the sauce, so that way I can make sure I have the full flavor of what I'm looking for. So I needed a little bit more seasoning, so I added some salt, and this is the kosher salt that I'm adding. Now you want to add it to your taste at this point, so just bring your sauce taste up to what your preference is. Our dinner is coming along well. Our steak has been simmering in our sauce. It is starting to become nice and tender. I'm going to go ahead for our last ingredient to our sauce. We're going to add in some fresh basil, and I'm adding in about 1/4 of a cup of fresh basil that I had just went on and just pulled apart. If you don't have any fresh basil on hand, you can add a teaspoon of dried basil will also do. And then I just kind of push the basil down into the pot. I'm going to put our top on our pot, leave it on simmer, and while it's simmering for about maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare our salad that's going to go with our meal, and I'm going to share with you how I make a nice light vinaigrette for our salad. And it's really good vinaigrette, and it's really simple. I just use some lemons. We have a lemon tree, so I'm always trying to find different ways to use all the lemons we have. And so I use just 1/2 of a lemon, and I'm using a Meyer lemon, that's our tree. So I use 1/2 of a lemon and about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of olive oil. And then I'm going to shake just a little bit of coarse black pepper. And then I'm also going to put just 1/2 of a teaspoon of some kosher salt, just 1/2 teaspoon of the kosher salt, and then just mix the salad in. It's just a nice little light vinaigrette dressing that just pairs so well anytime that I'm making like an Italian dish for dinner. I like to use this salad. We also do ranch and different things like that, but this salad dressing comes together really easily. It's light, it's tasty, and so again, that was just a little bit of squeezed fresh lemon and the olive oil, salt, and pepper. Well, our dinner is ready. I'm going to go ahead and serve us up some. Will you look at our steak? Oh my goodness. So I'm going to serve us up some. It is dinner time. The family is ready to eat. I'm going to see how we did today. I know it came out good. So this right here, y'all, this is our steak pizzaiola. I have some salad. I'm going to put some salad in my bowl. I also have there some of the grated Parmesan cheese. Actually, this is the shredded Parmesan cheese that I have right there. We're going to top our steak with some of that. I also have some nice crusty bread, and this is just some, you can use Italian bread or French bread or a crusty baguette. I put it in the oven for about 5 minutes, got it nice and toasty, sliced it up, and this is how we serve it. And if you like, you can also serve your steak pizzaiola with some rigatoni pasta or some penne pasta, either one of those. Well, I'm going to get your bite ready. I've got our pizzaiola, some cheese. Take your bite. Okay, I'm going to take my bite. Y'all, we have just made a restaurant style meal at home. It came out beautifully. And if you like olives, green pitted olives are also another ingredient that can also go in this dish, and you would add those in at the end, the same time that I added in the basil. Well, that is it for me today, y'all. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me today in my kitchen. Whether you were making this as a family meal or a nice stay-at-home date night dinner for two, I hope you give this recipe a try. If you're not subscribed to my channel yet, I invite you to hit that subscribe button. It's free. If you like this video and appreciate the content, don't forget to show it some love. Give it a thumbs up. Click share. Share this video with a friend or family. And click that notification bell so you can come back and visit me and get in my kitchen. And remember, it's always good when Dyvonne is cooking for the family. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.